We're going in search of Dr. Clark's fortune.
Assuming this fortune even exists, how do I know you won't just leave me for dead and take it all for yourself?
Life's a gamble. But if you want to win anything, you gotta grab those dice and let them fly.
Sometimes it's easier to let my fists do the talking.
You're Spitfire Harley.
But I'm trying to find out if there are other ways to be.
I'm offering you a front row seat to a much better show.
I'm an experienced navigator and tracker. So stick with me, and you'll be fine.
I used to know some folks that were handy with pistols.
If I can save somebody's loved one, grant them extra time to cherish together, well, there's no better way to help people, is there?
What I would not give for a stick or two of dynamite right now.
We all got our paths in this life.
I can tell you've got a cogitating mind, always assessing the situation, finding the risks and opportunities.
I prefer a more direct approach.
So, what do you say?
All right. I'm in.
Hey everybody, it's Ron with Ron's Computer Videos. We've got a great interview today. Let's get right to it. He's a programmer and the designer of the 2025 Western epic Rosewater, Mr. Francisco Gonzalez. How are you, sir?
Hello, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I'm doing better now that I have landed the introduction. So,
Excellent. That's all you need to do.
yeah, it's downhill from here. So
Sure.
But again, I want to thank you so much for taking time and meeting us here. I played Rosewater kind of at the tail end last year, and I very much like the adventure. I'm a big Western fan, so
Excellent.
and I love adventure games. So I was the target audience for this story that you told.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I'm honored to be. You've talked to a lot of amazing people, so I'm honored to be among them. And I'm glad you liked Rosewater.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So we'll definitely talk about that a little bit, but kind of more towards the end of the interview. But kind of just a bit of get to know you kind of things for people that may not be familiar with your work and all of that. But what got you interested in adventure gaming?
Well, like most people of, I guess I'm going to assume our age. I feel like we're in the same age bracket. I grew up.
I mean, as a 29-year-old man, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Yes. As a 29-year-old man who's been 29 for the past 15 years, I grew up playing the classic adventure games from LucasArts and Sierra, and I would say those are what cemented my love for the genre. I definitely started playing little shareware games earlier than that. I played the Hugo's House of Horrors series. And actually, what really sort of got me into the sort of enamored me with the general design principles of adventure games was a JRPG, the first Dragon Warrior. I played that as a child somehow because that's a very hard game. But not so much it wasn't so much the combat and the grinding and everything that really appealed to me. I just really liked the talking to characters and the going on the quests and things like that, which, things that the two genres share. And then when I focused more on playing games on the PC, I gravitated more towards adventure games because I never really had a high-end PC, and you didn't need really a high-end PC to run adventure games. So that being said, though, I do remember one Christmas where I got King's Quest IV and the Castle of Dr. Brain, and my PC at the time, I think, only had about 270 megabytes of RAM, and I couldn't have both games on at the same time. I had to alternate. If I wanted to play one, I had to uninstall the other one, because if not, you couldn't get into like the first room of the castle of Dr. Brain, because there wasn't enough disk space. But anyways, so yeah, to answer your question, my love of adventure games was sparked by playing the classics. I just really enjoyed them.
Yeah, as a young man, I mean, I didn't get to play these games when they were brand new. No, of course I did. But I'm in a similar boat where you had a PC, or you didn't have a high-end machine, so you did have to kind of make selections, play a little resource management game to get those things on there. So
I had to return Space Quest 6 to Electronics Boutique because my PC did not have the required 8 megabytes of RAM. So
some might say you dodged a bullet, but
well, I ended up getting it later, so I did dodge the bullet, but I like Space Quest 6. So
it's its own kind of strange thing.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. Plus, I think the community is definitely like all the digging and all of the things that have been revealed about the production and all that over the years is almost makes it more interesting to play it now, just knowing what we know about the guts of how that game was made.
That's a good guts. That's good, because that game is about guts at the end. That's well done. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why I'm part of the big league.
That's why you've got a microphone with a sticker of your likeness on it.
I know
that's fantastic.
It's because I couldn't get the Yeti people to pay me a commission, so it's sorry. No, seriously though. But no, I very much, I'm from that same era. I love those games. I remember that resource management game and having to kind of make some selections. But were you one of the people that was lucky enough to play like Maniac Mansion and things like that on like the Nintendo or some of these alternative kind of consoles or alternative ways to play some of these games back in the day?
I never played Maniac Mansion on the Nintendo, but I was lucky or unlucky enough, depending on your viewpoint, to play King's Quest V on the Nintendo.
Oh, wow.
That was actually the first Sierra game I ever played, believe it or not.
Wow.
I think. I'm fairly certain. I actually still own it. I still have my NES. I never owned King's Quest V. I rented it, but it turns out that my fiance owned it. So when she revealed that to me early in our relationship, I thought, oh, this is definitely meant to be. It's like she didn't have a working NES. I did. She had King's Quest V. I didn't. So it was like, combine the inventory items and it's a perfect match made in
That's a beautiful story. That's a beautiful story. I think about like how you guys bonded over trying to figure out how to throw a boot at a cat in 2 seconds with the D-pad.
God. Yeah, that control scheme was so bad. So bad. But hey, I don't know how I actually managed to finish that game when I was a kid on the NES. I don't know how I did it. I don't think I looked up a walkthrough because there was no internet then.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I did it, but somehow I did.
I think it's one of those things. It feels like some of those game experiences had the corners rounded off ever so slightly to kind of make it where maybe they were like the puzzles are there, but like a little more forgiving on some of that stuff. The Maniac Mansion for the Nintendo changes a few things to kind of tighten up the gameplay experience, just because they realized the D-pad going back and forth for verbs and all that.
Yeah, although I seem to remember, and it's been a long time since I played, so I might be wrong about this, but I remember towards the later part of the game when you're in that sequence with the beach and the boat and all that, on the NES version, you did everything actually, no, maybe I'm just misremembering, but I seem to remember that you couldn't give the old man the shell that he needs to hear you unless you had like maneuvered the boat to that screen. And if the boat wasn't on that screen, it would just give you an X, like if you tried using the inventory or something. I don't know. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. but because I'm not
totally
playing
on
that game
brand,
again to find
but
out.
yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and this is a question that there will be absolutely no consequences for. Sierra or LucasArts? And I'm not saying which is better. They both have. I mean, I love and collect both. So
I
I
do
am
too.
somebody that I mean, I like that Sierra games have these qualities and like LucasArts games have these qualities. But what do you think? What have you played more of, kind of in your gamer career?
Well, I mean, just I've pretty much played them all. So by sheer volume, though, I've played more Sierra games because there are more Sierra adventure games than LucasArts games. I see that's your big box collect. I'm pointing as though you can actually see. That's your big box collection behind you. Yeah, this is my big box collection. So you can see that I have pretty much all of the Sierra games, and I have all of the LucasArts games. But I'm thank you. It's been a long time. I had to do some retroactive recovery of some boxes on eBay that I had gotten rid of as a child.
I kept a few things, but yeah, I've had to recollect stuff too.
Yeah, but as far as I feel the same way as you. I don't hold one higher than the other. I enjoy things about both of them. There's things about both of them that I can criticize, but overall, I just enjoy them all. And I like Revolution software too. And I like Westwood, of course. Kyrandia 2, The Hand of Fate is a great game. So, yes, I'm just going to say all of them.
That's good, because all the developers were standing right off camera, just very upset. Okay, everybody. Okay, you can go home. Thank you. All right. So, but no, I do think that I know that there are camps and that type of stuff, and there are some people that really take the fandom of those things super seriously. But I think as somebody that turns around and creates things in those genres that kind of blends all that experience, and I think that comes forward or is very, very apparent in the games that you make, is that you are someone who grew up with the genre and very much enjoyed it enough to invest time and trouble in making new experiences. So it's and I think to do that, you do have to be a student of everything. You can't be like, sorry, I'm just going to make another Simon the Sorcerer because I hate life. I have to. They didn't show up. The Simon the Sorcerer developers didn't show up today. But, just something where it's like, if it's not German, I'm not happy.
Right.
It's
right.
But
yeah.
Well, as someone who has developed many, many games, more than a few by a bunch, why don't we talk a little bit about learning and programming an adventure game studio?
Sure.
And kind of what some of the challenges are on that, and how you can leverage community. If you're somebody that is new, I've got this story in me that I got to get out. It could be gas, but I've got the story in me that I want to get out. And it has to come out as an adventure game.
How do you do it? Okay.
Yeah. Just talk about a little bit about your experience about learning and programming and all of that.
Okay.
Because AGS seems to be where a lot of people get going these days.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it speaks to the ease of use of it and the fact that it's still being updated, which is very rare, I think. Yeah, so basically my personal history with AGS is 25 or so years ago. I was Googling adventure game maker very generically because I had, as I mentioned before, been bitten by this bug, and I wanted to make my own adventure game because I enjoyed playing them and I thought it would be fun to make one, despite not having any programming experience whatsoever. And I had found a shareware floppy disk that had a very generically named adventure game or game maker or something like that. It's actually on the Internet Archive. I found it. You can still mess around with it. It's terrible. I don't know how you would use it, but it still exists. It's out there. So anyway, I found Adventure Game Studio. I had actually also previously learned about an engine that was in development called Scram. That's SCRAMM, which was meant to be like Scum.
Mhm.
I think it was called Script Creator Reminiscent of. No, I don't think the R was reminiscent, but it was another acronym that was supposed to be like Scum, but that never got released. Although, funnily enough, there were people I remember interacting with on that forum who later went on to actually get involved in actual adventure game development. Like Andrew Langley, who went to work for Telltale, I think he might have been one of the developers, actually, now I think about it. That was a long time ago. I don't remember. I'm old. Anyway, so I'd sort of had this false start, hoping that Scram would come out, and I had messed around in Click and Play. And Click and Play was fun, but it wasn't really designed to make point-and-click adventure games. So I found Adventure Game Studio, and I saw that some games had been completed with it, which was a huge green flag because it meant that the engine was stable and it could be used to create a finished game. So I downloaded it and I started playing around with it. And at the time, it was only available for DOS. And it also had graphical scripting, which is pretty much how I learned how to use it and how I eased into it, because I didn't know anything about programming. So it was great because you would create some sort of condition. For example, you had it was structured very much like it still is now. You had your tabs. At the time, it was tabs. Now it's different things on a drop-down menu. But you had your rooms, and you would import your backgrounds, and those were your rooms. And then within the rooms, you could draw your fields for hotspots. You could put in objects, walkable areas, things like that. And when you wanted to have something happen, for example, if you would draw a hotspot for a door, you had then a menu that you could then use the graphical scripting to choose from the lists of commands. So it was clicks on door, and then you had what could happen. Player walks over, enter the coordinates, to play the animation of the door opening or whatever. So yeah, basically doing that and messing around was how I learned how to essentially program an adventure game and what was required, because adventure game programming, it can get complex depending on your project, but essentially it just kind of boils down to setting flags. Like if the door is open, then do this, or if you've talked to the character, do this, things like that. Not to simplify it too much, but it's the mechanics of it can be fairly simple. So yeah, it was pretty much just learn by doing. And then as the engine evolved and my programming skills evolved, I learned how to actually start coding. And once it moved to Windows, and once it moved to AGS 3.0, which then introduced object-oriented scripting, then I learned how to do that. And I held off a very long time. I was using 2.72 was the previous version that was still stable and what I was used to. And I held off so long before upgrading to 3.0. And then, of course, like everything, when I upgraded, I thought, why didn't I do this earlier? This isn't so hard. So, but yeah, that was my journey. And that's, I still use AGS to this day, like I said. So AGS was created by Chris Jones, who is a guy in the UK. Cool guy, met him many times. And it went open source about 15 or so years ago and has been consistently updated by a team of people who do it completely on a volunteer basis, which is great. And yeah, a lot of people say, oh, AGS is old. And sometimes in the reviews, not so much anymore, but in older reviews, sometimes you'd get things like, oh, I wish that they'd move on from these this outdated engine. It's showing its age. And I get it, but at the same time, it's really not. The only thing I wish AGS had support for, which is a very specific thing, is dynamic lighting and shadows, which I can live without that. It's easy enough to fake. I faked it in Rosewater. It's fine. So yeah.
The this long history of AGS and all the different versions and moving between DOS and Windows and sort of like programming tools and things like that. How much of the community really helps with kind of like getting people up to speed on those things? Because I understand that there's something that it's comfortable. I know this version of whatever this is. I mean, for example, my streaming computer here has Windows XP, so if we get a virus midway through the interview, that's why I didn't just ghost you. So I understand like needing to hold on to those things that you're familiar with. But when you do upgrade, what is the AGS community like in terms of being able to lean on other people for support, or like, hey, I've got this bug or I've got this issue that I'm trying to accomplish or I'm trying to get past? How do we do that?
Yeah, so I would say that part of the reason that AGS has been so successful is because it's always had a very strong community, and it's always had very strong documentation as well. Partly because of the community. So Chris Jones did a pretty good job of explaining everything in the manual that eventually became part of the demo. I don't remember if it had a manual in the DOS version, but it definitely had an IRC channel in DOS days, and that was a very important resource. And it was an active IRC channel. There was a lot of people in there, people who I made very good friends with, and helped a lot. And anytime I had a problem, I would go in there and say, hey, what's going on? If I needed real-time support, because there was also a forum. There's still a forum to this day. And a very active and helpful technical forum. Not just the technical forum, but also there's a what's called the Critics Lounge, where if you also did art, you could post your art and get feedback from people. And nowadays there's a Discord, and there's the forum, there's the Discord. The people who develop it are still active in the Discord, so there's a support chat for that as well. And nowadays it's the same thing. It's a great. Not only is the manual included in AGS, but there's also a wiki that gets updated, and it's fantastic. And on a personal note too, this is not so much anymore because unfortunately COVID put a stop to it, but there was actually a yearly AGS community meetup from 2002 until 2019 called Mittens. Wow. Don't ask me where the name came from. It was just a thing that happened. But it was hosted every year in a different country by a different person. And I went pretty much every year from 2004 to 2018, skipping a couple in between. And it was great because not only did I make these wonderful friends who we all shared a common interest. Funnily enough, we would hang out and like never talk about AGS or AGS games. Sometimes we would have a showcase night. If we had rented a house or something, we had access to a TV or a computer, we would have a little showcase of what we were working on, sort of thing, which was cool. But I got to go so many cool places. I got to go to Greece, to Italy, to Canada, I got to host one time in Florida. It was fantastic. Great, places I never would have necessarily gone to on my own, and I got to go and experience them with just a bunch of other fellow adventure game nerds, which was a lot of fun. The AGS community has really had a huge impact in my life. So I guess that's also why I feel a special bond with the engine itself, as strange as that sounds. That's also part of the reason I haven't wanted to give up and go try and learn Unity or anything, just because people who are familiar with Adventure Game Studio may know that the icon or symbol of it is a blue cup, and that's because going back to the early days when you would start a new game. Nowadays there's different templates you can use based on the LucasArts verb system or Sierra or Beneath a Steel Sky or whatever. Yeah, or you can just open a blank game. But in the old days, when you started a new game, it always just started with a couple of default preloaded sprites, and that had been drawn by Chris Jones. One of them, of course, was the character sprite of Roger, who was just a really, I don't want to say bad. It was basic. It was a very, very basic 2-color paint over of the Roger Wilco sprite from Space Quest 4, just to have as the default character. And then there was a few sprites. One of them was a blue cup. One of them was a pink poster, and another one was a key. And the blue cup became associated with AGS, and still to this day is there somewhere. And yeah. I seriously contemplated for a while getting a blue cup tattoo, but I'm too much of a chicken to get a tattoo, and so I never did. But I've always thought that if I were to get a tattoo, it would have to be something deeply meaningful to me, and I would say that the blue cup is probably the thing that I would get a tattoo of if I wasn't such a baby with needles, because AGS has had that much of an impact on my life. So
that's amazing. I'm glad to hear that, like, not only, you know, that adventure gaming and all of that, like, brings people together kind of as players, but also on the development side, that there is this whole community of people that have been getting together, you know, unfortunately not so much recently, but, you know, getting together for decades to kind of, like, even if you don't talk about it, just to kind of keep those communities and stuff alive. So that's
and you
really
also
amazing.
Yeah, you also have to understand too, context of time. This was in the early 2000s, and so at the time I had played all the adventure games, but I think I knew one guy in school who had also played Monkey Island 2. I didn't know anybody who played adventure games, really. And so when I found that there was this whole community of people, it was like winning the lottery. It was so weird at first to talk to other people about Guybrush Threepwood and know what, then had other people who knew what I was talking about. And that novelty obviously wore off after a while. But it's funny to think that that was a thing. Nowadays, you go on the internet and you find 700 people on a Discord who are, you know exactly what you're talking about, whether it's adventure games or any other little niche thing, because that's how much the internet has grown now. But back then, it was still very much a rare thing to be able to connect with people who had the same interest, especially such a niche interests. So
it is super cool, the kind of how the internet has bridged the gap for so many people in fandom, especially. But I do like the blue cup. That is something that does show up in a lot of people's games.
Yes.
Just as kind of a nod back to AGS. So I do think that is really cool.
I always put one in all of my games. Without fail, I will always put a blue cup in one of my games.
Well,
whether it's like in the foreground of a background or so.
If you do decide to get the tattoo, though, just tell the artist, hey, just keep it to 16 pixels by 16 pixels.
Oh yeah, no. We're just it has to be.
It's got to be small. Like, I've got to be able to go to a job interview and be like, 70K a year sounds like a good starting negotiation point.
If only.
Well, we talked a little bit about the development and using AGS to make the games. Let's maybe talk a little bit about some of your early efforts.
Sure.
Kind of in those early days, you made a lot of kind of comedic titles and things like that. So, and then eventually kind of finding your footing with the Ben Jordan Paranormal Investigator series.
It is a mouthful.
I will say it again. The Ben Jordan Paranormal Investigator series. I did.
Yes, you did it.
But it's just sort of like how, like, in those early beginnings with development and then moving forward and kind of getting your footing in that series.
Sure. So when I started using AGS, I, like everyone else, decided that I was going to make my own little Monkey Island fan game. Except it wasn't a Monkey Island fan game. It was basically a self-insert where I made Monkey Island, but instead of Guybrush, it was me. And instead of everybody else, it was all my teachers. And the villain was one of my teachers, who was also a ghost. I didn't release these publicly until years later. I still don't know what possessed me to release them publicly. I've tried to get them scrubbed from the internet, but they're still out there. I'm not going to say the names because it's embarrassing. But that's sort of how I cut my teeth privately. Publicly, I cut my teeth on a series called Reality on the Norm, which was one of the games that I first played. I can't remember if the first AGS game I played was the first episode of Reality on the Norm, or if it was I'm blanking on the title. Rob Blank in Better Days of the Defender of the Universe. These were both games made by Ben Yahtzee Croshaw, who you might know now from The Escapist. But he got his start in the AGS scene, and apparently had a very contentious exit from the AGS community. This happened shortly before I joined, so I didn't witness it. But at the time, the legend of Yahtzee was very much a thing. But he had created several games, and he went on to make some more afterwards. And so Reality on the North was a series that he started, and it was interesting because it was very community-based. What I mean by that is that it was encouraged. It was like a crowdsourced thing, essentially. He drew a lot of obviously he drew all the backgrounds and sprites for his game, but he did it in a very simple style that's easy to emulate. So you didn't have to have artistic talent to recreate the look of it, which was great. So the idea was that if you made a game and you could use those backgrounds, they were available to download. And if you created new backgrounds, you were encouraged to upload those so that someone else could use them. If you created a new character, you were also encouraged to do that. So someone could come in and not at some point there would be enough resources that someone could come in and not have to do any original art, and that didn't necessarily have to be a limiting factor if you couldn't draw. So yeah, from there a bunch of really fun games came out. Like everything else, after a while it got a little oversaturated, and the quality of games coming out was not the same quality of games as when it was fewer people, but so it goes. But out of that came a lot of AGS developers. I mean, I got my start there. Dave Gilbert got his start there. A few other people who made other AGS games got their start there, but didn't go on to make commercial games. But I'll give them shout outs anyway. Krilla Blomqvist, I believe, got his start there. He went on to make Calsoon and a couple of other fun AGS games. Helm, whose name is very Greek, and I will butcher if I say it, but he hosted Mittens in 2005. He went to go work for Mojang eventually. Don't think he's there anymore, but he's a great pixel artist, fantastic pixel artist. He also made a Reality on the Norm game or two. Anyway, so that I made three games. The first game I made was called The Lost Treasure of Reality on the Norm and starred a pirate named Hookie McPegle. It was very short. The cool thing about these Reality on the Norm games too was that they were very comedic. They were very silly, but it was also cool because a lot of times people made games that either took ideas from other games or were sequels to other games, or sometimes happened in tandem with other games. So there's some games where there's an event that takes place in one game and then someone else would make a game and it was an alternate viewpoint of that. So Hookie McPegle is just a silly game about a pirate who comes to town, but then at the end of the game, he, instead of finding the treasure, he somehow digs his way onto the platform, a wooden platform, where the mayor, who is a zombie, because of course, that was the plot of the first game, he's giving a speech and he says, "Oh, you know what? We're looking for a new postman. Would you like to be the new postman?" And Hookie says, "Okay, sure." And that's how the game ends. And the reason that happened is because Dave Gilbert had made a game called The Postman Only Dies Once, previous to that, where the postman is murdered and you play as a private investigator trying to solve the murder of the postman. So I was like, okay, there's the postman's dead. They need a new postman. And then I made the sequel, Hookie McPegle, Pirate Postman, where he is now the postman and then he uncovers a conspiracy. But then the joke is that he's a pirate and he's illiterate. So the first part is that you have to learn how to read to be able to deliver the mail. Very absurdist. And then, because someone had drawn a new, more expanded version of the town square background that was a big scrolling screen with all these buildings, someone had added just in the background this nice looking Italian restaurant. And I thought, okay, let me make a game about whoever owns that restaurant. So I made The Chef, which was about an Italian named Luca and his brother, Guido, who's a nudist. And that whole game was basically a setup for a really bad joke at the very end, because the whole Guido gets kidnapped and Luca has to go find him. These are very short games, by the way. You can finish them in like an hour or 2 hours. So there's not a whole lot to them. But basically the whole conflict in that game is that Luca's restaurant gets shut down. And then it turns out that the bad guy of the town is behind shutting it down, and then he kidnaps Guido, so Luca has to go save him. And the whole time he's like, why don't you put on any clothes, Guido? You can't be going around naked. It's like, why that lifestyle? And then at the end he's like, no, you know what? I am going to accept your lifestyle once he's known. I'm going to be known as the Naked Chef, because that was a thing back then. Not actually. For those of you who may not remember, there was a Jamie Oliver, I believe, went by the Naked Chef, and it was because he used like raw ingredients or something.
Yeah.
So I did this very elaborate.
I think he got sued for false advertising.
But I did this very elaborate at the time animation of Luca just like ripping off his chef's coat and taking off his pants, and of course a big black bar censoring him, because Guido also put a pin in that, because I'll tell you a story once I finish this. And that was just like the whole thing, and then that was my reason for making that game. But it was a lot of fun. And then I started making a fourth one called Kill Phil, which was based on Kill Bill, because there was a character called Phil in the universe of Reality on the Norm, and I was going to make it this like super cinematic, highly ridiculously over the top gory game, but I never finished it, so probably for the best, because it didn't really fit with the tone of Reality on the Norm. But anyway, many years, months, sometime later, somebody made a game. I don't remember who it was. The game was, I don't remember what it was called, but the premise of it was that the reporter character was going around because someone had leaked nude photos of someone or something. I don't know. And Guido is in the game, and he's standing behind a table because, again, it's the comedy Austin Powers blocking out the... But in the course of the game, something happens where you get him to walk out. You have to get him to walk out from behind the table, and this person did a full animation of him walking out without the bar in its full glory. And I was like, this is like I'm seeing my child naked.
Yeah.
And realizing that he's incredibly well endowed. I had no idea. So yeah, it was like like comedically like, okay, all right, put the kids to bed. And it was hilarious, but it was also horrifying. But you know, that's what you have to expect when you put your characters up for free use.
I do like the whole yes and nature of that era, where it was just sort of like, you know, hey, like, you know, I'm gonna tee you up for wherever you're gonna take it next, you know, just
it was incredibly creative, and I love that about it. So after I had done the Reality on the Norm games, I thought about what I wanted to do next as something of my own creation. And again, going back to this whole community, AGS community thing, I had this idea for a game where you play a guy who is hunting down the AGS source code because Chris Jones lost the AGS source code, and you have to travel all around the world and find all of the different AGSers to help you find the source code. And I did that. Project didn't get very far. I wrote a design document and I came up with some terrible puzzles, but I never really got very far. However, I did take that idea of world travel and I repurposed it, and from there came the Ben Jordan Paranormal Investigator series, because I then wanted to, I was very much influenced by Gabriel Knight. That's one of my favorite adventure games, specifically the first one. And so I thought it would be cool to take my own stab at doing a game series about a paranormal investigator, but I didn't want to do it focused on monster of the week kind of thing, like vampires and witches or whatever. So I thought it would be interesting to incorporate the world travel element, and specifically the legends and folklore aspect of paranormal stuff. So I wanted Ben Jordan to be a college kid who somehow had a lot of money to travel around. I never really addressed where he had got all his money to travel around from.
Student loans.
Yeah, exactly. He's in crippling debt now. He's
Right.
he's we don't talk about what he does now. But OnlyFans. No,
Yes.
So basically I just thought it would be cool to do a series where each game was a separate case. That meant they didn't have to be long games, and focused on just specific regional paranormal things. So of course I started in my own backyard because I was in Florida at the time. Represent. And it was about the skunk ape, which is the Bigfoot that lives in the Florida Everglades.
Mm-hmm.
So I made the first game in about 2 weeks. It was very simple, but people seemed to like it. And so I thought, okay, I'll make another one. Then I made one about the lost galleon of the Sultan Sea, which is apparently a thing, even though I've never been to the Sultan Sea. And so I made that one in about 2 months. And then with each game I made, it took a little bit longer, but I kept honing my skills and trying new things. And eventually, by the time I made the third game, I thought, okay, well, I need to figure out a plan here and figure out how many of these I'm going to actually make. So I sat down and I made a big Bible of design and how many stories I wanted to tell and what I wanted to do, with allowing for some flexibility. And in the end, I decided I was going to make 8 games. And so I made the first 3 games in 2004. And then from then until 2012, I made 8 games. I remade the first 2 games, so technically I made 10 games total. And the last game took me 4 years because in 2009, I got a full-time job, not working 9 to 5. Cue the Dolly Parton song.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the energy I didn't have the same flexibility as I did when I was still like working at Starbucks. And I didn't really feel like spending my weekends or evenings making games. So there were times where I wouldn't open AGS for a very long time. So it took me 4 months to make the last Ben Jordan game. So yeah, that was the Ben Jordan series.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty impressive though, because I mean, again, it's a lot to do for free, especially, and how good the games are and how they hold up now. It says a lot, because there's a lot of people that set out, just like you were saying earlier, where it's just sort of like, I'm going to make the next Monkey Island, and they get a little ways into it or something, or life gets in the way or whatever, or they just lose steam, or they tell too many people about it. And that seems to be my thing, where it's like if you tell people about the thing you're doing, then you get the same payoff as actually doing it, and you lose your initiative. You start rolling low initiative on all that stuff. So, but no, just the amount of, and then not just that, but coming and doing the deluxe versions of the game. And I mean, yeah, it's a heck of a lot of work. And compress that into I think just across 9 years.
Yeah. Well, thank you. The Ben Jordan series, I'd say, was fundamental for me in teaching me several skills that I still hold very important, or value very, very much to this day. One of them being finishing a project, because I always say to anybody starting out, the first thing you need to learn is how to finish a project, for the reason you just said. Because if you get too excited and over scope and don't realize how much work is actually going to be involved, there's a very low chance that you'll actually finish it. The other thing was always having a plan for what to do next, because it was a series and I had a finite number of games eventually planned. I always knew what the next one was going to be. And so I always had that motivation to finish the current one, because then I would get excited about the next one and being able to do the next one. And nowadays it's that I still hold on to that, because I always like to have at least one or two ideas for what I'm going to do next in the pipeline when I'm working on a game, especially, if it tends to take a long time, like what happened with Rosewater that took 6 years. But yeah, and also just being able to push myself and challenge myself to grow in the different fields. I didn't really do anything. I don't think I really did anything super intricate programming wise. I don't think I really pushed myself. With the exception of learning to actually code and clean up my code, although that came way later. When I worked on a game with someone else and they yelled at me for not indenting my code. But that's for later. But just from an artistic perspective, from a technical perspective, learning to work with voiceover people, just things like that. I think with every Ben Jordan game I tried, and well, every game I make in general now, but specifically in the learning process with the Ben Jordan games, I always tried to push myself somehow so that I could do the best with what I had at any given time. Yeah.
Well, I'll say it drew a lot of water in the adventure gaming community contemporary to when the games were coming out, because I remember that that it got a lot of press, more than a lot of indie games and adventure type games at that time were really getting. So
I was very lucky in that regard, that people seemed to pay attention. I think in part because I got them out so quickly, and I didn't give, with the exception of the last one, I think I didn't give people enough time to forget until the last one.
It's striking while the iron's hot, but
exactly.
I mean, like the quote I've got here from oneup.com was it is one of the best games that money can't buy.
Oh wow.
So yeah. And there's other gushing things, but I don't want to embarrass you. It's just, I mean, there were a lot of very nice things that were said about the games, and there were people still saying nice things, because again, it's a lot of entertainment for free.
Well, I mean, I made those games, like I still make the games now because I love making the games, and I like doing it as a creative outlet. Now I'm just incredibly lucky that I also make money doing it. But if money wasn't a thing, so I will quote, I will name drop, and I will quote a voice actor that I'm very much a fan of, who I was very lucky to work with, Dave Fenoy, who you may know as Lee from The Walking Dead, who's also in Rosewater. But he has a podcast or a weekly interview show called Ask Dave Fenoy Anything, and he often says about voice acting, it's how I feel about game development, if money weren't a thing, we would do it for free.
Yeah.
And I agree. So yeah.
No, it's if you love it, if it's your passion, it definitely shows. So and I was thinking for a second, gosh, what if money wasn't a thing? Like that would free me up.
Well,
to do so much amazing things.
Yeah, but on that note, it's always interesting to me, because I feel like the one of all the Ben Jordan games, the one that people seem to like the most is the third one, and that is the one that I had the most making. And I think there is definitely a correlation between how much fun you're having making a game and the final product, and how much people enjoy the game.
Oh yeah, it's it comes through. Passion. It comes through. Yeah. It's like when you it's not a thing anymore, but there was this magical period of time where you could go to a store and purchase this thing called a DVD. And on this, which was a optical disc, and on this little disc, there were oftentimes commentaries from the people that made the movie, and you will get like the screenwriter, and you'll get the director, and you could just tell that these people hate each other. And you're like,
those are the good ones.
It's like, oh yeah, that's why this movie was awful.
It's also good when they love each other. Have you heard the director's commentary with Jake Gyllenhaal on Donnie Darko?
Oh gosh, I have no doubt.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
he does a Christopher Walken impersonation halfway through. It's great.
It just sticks with it. They're like,
yeah,
you're not gonna have me back. I'm just gonna do this the entire time.
He's saying that they should have gotten Christopher Walken to play Frank the Bunny, and he's just like, oh, hello, I'm Frank. I'm a bunny. How you doing? So, yeah.
Oh my god. So no, but it comes through. It comes through. And and we were talking earlier. You were mentioning about like meeting people and kind of building community and things like that. I know you've worked with some very cool folks in the adventure gaming, especially in the indie adventure gaming community. David Gilbert from Wadjet, Julie Minamata from with the Crimson Diamond
Julia
and all of that. Yeah, from Julia Minamata Incorporated.
Julia Minamata from Julia Minamata LLC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not paying by the letter, so we just.
Yeah.
They're both great. Yeah. So it's nice. It's nice that this community that is kind of built up around people that are making fun things, and I'm sure that those are two really fun people to work with.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, Julia, I got to work with her in the capacity that she did some art for me for Rosewater. She designed some really cool cards that you see in one of the random encounters, so you might not even see it if you played through it. But it was really cool to be able to work with her in that professional capacity, because I mean, I've known her. When did I meet her? I think I met her at PAX West in 2019, but I knew of her from stuff she had been posting on the AGS forums with the Crimson Diamond. And Dave I met, like I mentioned before, through Reality on the Norm, and then when he started, when he formed Wadjet and he started publishing games, I was very lucky that he kind of gave me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. He said, I'd love to publish one of your games. And I think that came down to the fact that he knew that I finished games, which that skill came in handy.
Get it across the finish line. I need people like you.
Exactly. So yeah, I was very lucky to get my foot in the door that way with my first commercial with Golden Wake. And then I got to work with Ben Chandler on Shardlight, because Ben was another person who, like me, made a lot of games in a very short amount of time. And he made a lot of really cool, quirky games with this really unique art style. And so Ben and I became friends just because I reached out to him and I said, I really like your games. And then we started talking through IRC and Stickam and TalkBox, if anyone remembers those. We had group meetings there too. And yeah, Ben he's one of my closest friends still to this day. And we decided we wanted to make a game together because we both knew we finished games, and that became Shardlight. So that was really cool. Yeah. And I've mostly been just a solo developer on all of my commercial projects, with the exception of Shardlight, where it was the two of us doing that one. But yeah, I've also gotten the chance to collaborate with other people, and I've done, I've helped share with other people's projects. I've done some voice acting for other AGS games, even though I'm not really a professional voice actor. Yeah, it's just been a really cool little group. And the beautiful thing is that everybody is friends, and there isn't really this weird or competition or hatred or anything like that, right? So yeah, it's just cool people who like doing the same thing. And yeah,
that's really good. I'm glad to hear that, because there are so many communities out there, especially that around computing kind of in general, where there's this competition. You get these Daniel Plainview people that come in that absolutely poison stuff, where it's not enough that I succeed, everyone else has to fail.
I have a certain competition in me. I want no one else to succeed. I love that. That's one of my favorite movies.
I do love that. I do appreciate that they have the restraint to stop at 3 hours. They were just like, you know
Yeah.
what? There's
Yeah.
like we're a quarter of the way through the book, but you guys, it's good. I feel fed.
I've tried and failed about 3 times to read that book. I know it's not a 1-to-1. I know it's very different, but I just haven't been able to stick with it, and I don't know if I ever will. But I
pick it up and I look at the cover and it just says oil. It's just like, but it's like oil, and I'm like, this is like shocking. I just put it back down.
Yeah. And then you read and it's like 10 chapters about we're driving some more. Here's some more driving. Dad's driving, and it's okay. When are we gonna get to the something?
It's like somebody had read a lot of Tolkien and they were like, you know what? People love walking. What if they drove?
Yeah, it's always because I mean this is early 20th century, I think, right?
Yeah,
more or less. It's always funny the contrast when you start reading stuff from like the mid or late 19th century when you can tell they were being published. They were being published in serials, and 2, they were being paid by the word.
Yeah, there's a lot of Conan Doyle like that, where it's just like, can we pump the gas here? I understand. It's especially like the Lost World, where
I haven't read that one, but
it's I mean, there's a lot of like Holmes mysteries that you can tell that it's like I had this much column with that I had to make every week, and it's so the story, it's just like and then there's others where it's like, gosh, I could have really lived in this universe like slightly longer, but no, it's like the Lost World is definitely, but it is set to where it is like, and see you next week.
Right.
See you next week. So I get it. Well, I want to make sure that we've got time to talk about Rosewater and all of that. So, but I just got like one more question I was going to ask you. You brought up voice acting. You've done some amazing impressions so far.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you about because I mean, you've done some roles in a couple of other people's productions, and I know that for Foolish Mortals that you were part of the putting together the cast for that. Do you want to talk a little bit about voice acting and voice direction and trying to find the right person for the role?
Sure. So I've been, I've the first game I ever did with voice acting was actually, I did a voiced version of Hookie McPegle, like Pirate Postman, funnily enough. And my big get for that one was Yahtzee. I actually emailed Yahtzee and I was like, hey, do you want to be in my game? And he said, sure. And he played Death, which was really funny. But yeah, like I said, I grew up playing the classic Sierra games and LucasArts games, and the LucasArts games were always very well voiced. The Sierra games, not always. Some were. Some were.
Who's in the break room? Get him in here.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is funny because that's how I started. It wasn't who's in the break room. It was just who can I email and who can send me, who can email me MP3s that are less than however much my email megabyte quota is. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I always enjoyed games that had voice acting. I always thought it would be fun to try doing it, and the fact that AGS supported it, I thought, okay, hey, I'll try it. So yeah, that was the first game I did, and then when I did when I started with the Ben Jordan games and I decided I wanted to remake the first 2 games, I added voice acting to those, and then I did the last 2 games with voice acting. So the Ben Jordan series is bookended on both of 8 games. The first 2 and the last 2 have voice acting, but the middle ones don't, so you have to imagine. And yeah, then going forward with all my commercial games, I always expected that they would have voice acting, and they did. But yeah, it's always been really fun, and it's one of those things that I've always, again, wanted to improve upon, because for my freeware games, like I said, it was just people just volunteering their time. I didn't pay them. I couldn't afford to pay them. I wish I could have, but I didn't. Or I wish I could have, but I couldn't. I wish I could have, but I didn't, and I kept it all for myself. All those millions of buckaroos that I made from those
Buckazoids that I made.
Buckazoids, yeah, that I made from those free downloads.
I drank all of them milkshakes.
That's right.
Yeah.
My straw reached all the way across the. Anyway, I actually have a picture with Ben where we went to a barbecue place here in New York, and I made a big straw, and he's drinking the straw out of my glass, and I'm making this sad face. Anyway. What was I talking about? Voice acting.
I was Paul Danoing.
Yeah. So for my first 3 games, A Golden Wake, Shardlight, and Lamplight City, I worked with some nice, wonderful voice actors, local to New York, non-union, and they were great people. They did a great job. I very much enjoyed the experience. Casting, always worked with a casting director. Shelley Fenoy actually was who I worked with, who has also worked on many of the other Wadjet games. And that was always a fun process because you asked about finding people for the role. So usually it was Shelley would teach a voiceover class, and so she would send out auditions to people that she knew from her classes and stuff. We never really did a wide casting sort of thing at that time. So, you'd put in your character descriptions, your specs, what you thought they should sound like, maybe provide an example of a character from a movie or something that you have in mind. And then you'd get your auditions. She would listen to them. She'd send along the better ones, and then you would pick from there. And then at that time, we were recording in person. So various levels of interesting places to record. So Shardlight was recorded at an actual studio called CityVox in Manhattan, which Dave used for a lot of his games because he knew somebody who knew somebody, and it was like a really cheap deal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He used to record in his apartment. We recorded A Golden Wake in his bedroom, which was very strange looking back on it, but it's what you do. Yeah. And then Lamplight City, we did it also in a studio. It was a building that was it was a storage unit place. Those places where you go and you just have storage units and they're all in a building. But this place, a lot of people had converted the storage units into recording studios. And a friend of mine who used to work at Avalanche had a little recording studio that he had, and he let us use it for practically nothing, which was great. Except there was a band next door that would record every so often, and it bled into the recording. But thank goodness for Isotope. But that was a fun experience too. Ivy Dupler has told a great story about how sketchy it was when I first met her and was like, "Oh, sorry, we locked ourselves out. Oh, here's the guy. Oh, don't worry about the mattress. That's just there for noise dampening." It was, yeah. Looking back on it now, it's a little weird, but again, it's part of the experience. But anyway, all this is to say that, yeah, I've always enjoyed the process of voice acting. And with Rosewater, I wanted to push myself a little bit further. And I've talked about this on other podcasts. I'll make this very brief, but it was a union project, which means it was with SAG-AFTRA. It was using union actors. I made a list of a bunch of actors that I wish I could get based on either I was familiar with their work, usually because they had done voices in the classic Sierra or LucasArts games or other things, or people who I had listened to their demo reels and I thought they would fit the characters because I didn't hold open auditions for Rosewater. And through some magic, all of the 22 people that I made that were on my list said yes. We did it all over Zoom because COVID basically ensured that all voice actors have home studios now. It was a thing before, but it's pretty much a thing now. And that was a really great experience. And then going on from there, my fiance, who's a copy editor, and she has her own business called The Game Editors, which I will plug now. She does script editing and copy editing for games. She's done the editing for both Rosewater and Lamplight City. She and I decided that as an added service to her script editing and whatever, we could also provide voiceover production services. And so that's how we did Foolish Mortals. We met up with David and Sophie, the developers at Adventure X, and we said, hey, if you're looking for somebody to help you with the voiceover, we can do that. And they said, sure. So we did. And then while we were working on that, they had an actor in mind for their lead who ended up not being the person that they went with in the end. But that person encouraged them to make it a union project because the actors, the strike was happening at the time.
Right.
So he said, you're probably better off doing this anyway. So I said, hey, if you want to do it, I highly recommend it. We can make it work with your budget. If we can make it work with your budget, we figured out how to do it. And then, yeah, that one, they had already cast a few of the characters for their demo, which they kept. And then there was just a few more roles. And I helped them. I made some suggestions, but ultimately they pretty much handled the casting, but we did the directing. And it was cool because they were in all the sessions too, because it's very different directing a game that you wrote versus directing a game that someone else wrote. I like to have the writer there because if there's even though I play the game and I have a sense of what's going on, there's always maybe some little nuance that you may not get the writer had in mind. Yeah. So it's always nice to have that little cushion there to be like, actually, this, yeah. So
the emotional hook of this line is this.
Yeah,
you're right.
Exactly. And it was just a lot of fun because I got to make fun of David for all of his horrible dad jokes that he said, well, I wrote this at 2 a.m. And I said, yes, I can tell. But that was a really fun experience, and I hope that I can continue to do that because it's a lot of fun. Yeah, the voice acting is always the reward. I feel like when I've been making a game, hearing all of your lines come to life, being brought to life by just amazing people. Yeah, and then I have to be really careful to be professional and not fanboy over some of these people, because it was hard. But
no, I can understand. It's you've worked with some really amazing people, so I can definitely see just like so many roles and just the kind of the weight that they bring to a project is always very important too. It's
I have a question for you. Sure. You've spoken to a lot of really cool people. Have you ever fanboyed over anybody you've spoken to, or have you ever resisted the urge to?
I will tell you what. I recently interviewed Hal, and and I screwed up the intro like 3 times because I said and what it came down to was I was just in a hurry because he was kind of pressed for time that day, and so I'm like I just got to slow down and realize that. Yes, this is the guy that wrote Corvette Summer, but you have to dial it back in. So no, it's I've been really, really fortunate. I've talked to a lot of really, really cool people. And what the thing you just realize is that there's everybody is just a person, they're just a human being. And a lot of these folks are just really glad that people remember. And I think that everyone I've talked to, they just come in with such humility, and they've done so many amazing things, especially like me on the outside looking in. It'd be really easy, to kind of fanboy and all of that. But there's been a couple where you get to the end of the interview and they're like, this went so much better than I thought. And I was like, yeah, I really hope so. And I was like, I hope nobody is wasting your time with like the Chris Farley interviewing, like Paul McCartney. Remember when you were in the Beatles? That was awesome. I mean, I can understand that they probably get a certain amount of that. So
definitely.
So I want to try to be the opposite of that. You just kind of just talk to people like your old friends and hopefully have a really good conversation comes out of that. So
I feel the same way, and that's actually that reminds me of something else that I mention when I've talked about this, because I've one of the things I'm trying to do is to let other indie developers know that this resource of using SAG-AFTRA actors and these contracts that they've made specifically for indie developers, that it's something that they can use, because I feel like it's an untapped resource. And one of the things that I had as a sort of mental block, which I think a lot of people feel the same way, is thinking, oh, well, so-and-so is not going to say yes because I'm just a guy in his basement making a little pixel art game. They're not going to say yes. They've been in all these other amazing projects. And that's not the case at all. Everyone is just really nice and really eager to work. And it's not I'm sure that there's egos out there who would do that, but I haven't encountered any yet. So I think that's just a universal thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, my day job is in information technology, but my side job is I'm an under 5 for a lot of geezer teaser kind of movies and things like that. I'm the guy that they bring in that it's like, I don't know where my son is. Cut, and then you just go right back to craft.
Nice.
So I'm a couple credits away, but it's Taft-Hartley for right now. But I completely understand. Having worked on Union, being one of the people that's lucky enough to be that the rules allow for that. So if you can hire Union, absolutely hire Union. If for nothing else, for your protection, for the protection of the people that you're working with, all of that. So, but no, I get it. Yeah. We touched on the voice acting part of Rosewater. Let's use this last little bit here to talk a little bit about the production on that and kind of where it is today, because you just recently had the 1-year anniversary of the game being released. I know,
time flies.
It sure does, especially when you're pre-recording something and it won't come out until after the thing happens. Oh wait, sorry.
Don't spoil the magic.
Oh no, the sausage.
It's okay.
All right. Well, let me ask
you. Guido, keep it away. Sorry.
Yes. So Rosewater is it's a Western. It's an adventure game. What inspired you to pick that as your sort of your backdrop for your story?
Okay. Well, so I want to preface all this by saying that this is great. I think I'll go a little bit more into the weeds here than I have previously. 1, because the game's been out so long. 2, because you mentioned before about DVD commentaries. I've done commentary tracks for a lot of my games, and I was going to do one for Rosewater, and I was going to time it with the 1-year release, but for various reasons. 1, I'm lazy. 2, I'm already hard at work on my next game, and I kind of have moved on from Rosewater. But basically, I'm not going to do a developer commentary for Rosewater. So I will give you more in-depth behind-the-scenes things, or at least I'll try to in this interview for that.
I'll make sure to put up like a little Charon at the bottom. It's like director commentary.
From
there
this
you go. Point forward. Okay, great.
There you go. Yes. All right. So I wanted to get Christopher Walken, but no. Hello, I'm in Rosewater. Oh my God. Okay. So the idea for the Rosewater came to me while I was making Lamplight City, which was my previous game. And Lamplight City came to me because I wanted to make a detective game that was set in the 19th century, because I like that vibe. And so as I was making that game, but I wanted to make a game where it was okay to fail. That was the unique selling point of Lamplight City, is that you play a detective game, you can get things wrong, but the game doesn't punish you. It keeps going, and you have to live with the consequences. So Lamplight City and Rosewater, as an aside, have sort of been my little era of exploring, designing for branching narrative and choice and consequence, which is not what you would consider the typical point-and-click adventure game style. It's a different it's a different genre within the genre, I guess we can say. So anyway, yeah, I was making Lamplight City, and I had done all this world building, this alternate 19th century, because I didn't want to be limited to historical accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to make it an alternate history United States that had not declared independence and was called the Commonwealth of Vespuccia. And that way I could just sort of pick and choose all of the things I liked from 19th century, both detective and non-detective fiction. Just the vibe of the city is a mixture of New York, New Orleans, that sort of London thing. Very influenced by Poe, Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Dickens. The code name was Poe Dickens. But you asked me about Rosewater, but I like talking about Lamplight City, and I go off on tangents. So anyway, I had done this whole world building thing, and I thought, okay, well, this is a cool world. I like it. What other part of it can I explore? And then I thought, oh, well, contemporarily, because Lamplight City is set in 1844, and I thought, okay, well, this is the early days of the Old West. Because usually you think the Old West, usually most fiction in the Old West is set in the later part of the 1800s, after the golden age, quote unquote, of the cowboys and everything, not so much during the actual westward expansion. And so I thought, well, that would be cool. A Western in this world, this sort of steampunk alternate history. It's sort of, it makes this great companion piece to Lamplight City, because Lamplight City is this very dark, urban, claustrophobic, smog-filled city. This is going to be a wide open, bright, sunny space. It's a world where people get away. They're reinventing themselves. There's lots of interesting themes to explore. And there's not that many Western adventure games. And there's even fewer Western adventure games that are not just Blazing Saddles inspired comedies.
Right.
So
there's a lot of Freddie Farkas out there.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
There's lots of Freddie Farkas. There's not so much Briscoe County Jr., which a lot of people.
That's a great comparison.
To. Yeah. So that's where the idea came from. And then when I was thinking about what I wanted the story to be about, I thought about how I wanted to explore the idea of the organic branching narrative. And so I thought about things like The Walking Dead, Telltale's the first season of The Walking Dead, and like Conquest of the Longbow, for example, which is one of my favorite underrated Sierra games, and just how much choice and consequence and branching there is in that game. And because it is a quote-unquote adventure game, because the story is going on an adventure, and very much like Indiana Jones style, even though it's not the typical Indiana Jones or Uncharted or Tomb Raider style adventure where they're hunting for something and there's always a bad guy just 2 steps behind them. And the thing that always annoys me about those games is you go through all these things and you solve these intricate puzzles and you go into the secret cavern, and then all of a sudden, oh no, it's the bad guy and his people, and they just took the back door and here they are now. That always annoys me. So, but anyway, that aside, so it was a basic adventure story. And when I was designing it, and I thought, well, what do I want the key features of this game to be? And I thought, well, I want it to be, you have traveling companions, and you can get to know them as much or as little as possible. But I want there to be specific things where you learn more about them, like in Fallout New Vegas, where you have the companion-specific quest chains. And I wanted the story to be affected by those stories. I was really ambitious at the beginning until I realized it was going to take me way too long to make the game. Like, I was thinking that at the end of the second act, the entire third act would either be continue hunting for the treasure or go on a revenge quest or save somebody, like 3 completely different things. And then I was like, no, that's not going to happen. There was a time where I thought, well, I think there should be a companion where you only get one chance at the very beginning to recruit them, and if you say the wrong thing, they won't come with you at all. And if they come with you, you'll get a completely different thing. And that went out the window too. So I was like, I'm just one guy, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the genesis. And then as I refined it, I thought, okay, well, this is still going to be a big game. I didn't know how big it was going to be until I was making it. And then, yeah, just 6 years later, I finally released it.
Well, it's I remember playing the demo back in the day
Yes.
too, just to kind of get a taste of the world that you had built. So my question is, how did you choose your protagonist?
So that I don't really remember. That's the
It's a good as
problem with
answer as any.
No,
I mean,
it's-
I mean, game design's a long process.
It
and
is,
so
it
many,
is.
so much stuff changes along the way,
It
and
really
you're
does.
bringing all these different inspirations in. So, I mean, I can understand where it's like it just happened one day.
Yeah. I feel like I definitely knew I wanted to have the main character be related to someone from Lamplight City. So the main character is the sister of the partner who dies in Lamplight City. Spoilers if you haven't played that game. But I don't know. I don't know why I felt compelled to focus on the Leger family. But I also just thought it would be interesting to have a main character in a Western who wasn't just a Clint Eastwood man with no name, just tough as nails, cowpoke guy. I thought it would be more interesting to have a woman who's a former brawler who's a writer. You know, it fits more with the. That was the other thing when I was thinking about it too, because when I was first thinking about how you could approach things differently in a Western game, I thought, well, if you have a gun, you can solve a lot of problems very easily. And at one point I thought about maybe taking the Blade Runner approach, where in that game you have a gun, you can draw it whenever you want. You don't really use it to solve puzzles, though. You kind of just shoot people. So I thought, okay, well, maybe we have somebody who doesn't have a gun, but maybe we have somebody who has two possible approaches, a more cerebral approach, a more violent approach. It's kind of taking that philosophy that Tim Schafer talked about with Full Throttle, where he compares how Bernard from Day of the Tentacle versus Ben from Full Throttle would get through a locked door. So I thought, okay, well, maybe you could have a character that has both those possibilities.
Right.
Because as I'm sure you and anyone else who's played an adventure game is aware, there is often that ludonarrative dissonance where your character is supposed to be a good completely misanthropic and do terrible things to all the NPCs.
Right.
So I thought it would be fun to have a character. It wouldn't be too much of a tonal shift if you had a character that could punch somebody to get past them if they were a former fighter, which also fit in contemporarily because there was a lot of boxing and underground boxing stuff then. So yeah, I can't pinpoint exactly where I got the idea for Harley, but I always had the name Harley, not because of the motorcycle, but I always had the name Harley in my mind. And I thought, Harley Leger, that's a cool sounding name. Leger, the name Leger actually comes from a college professor I had for an art class. That name was always bouncing around in my head. So when I made Lamplight City, I had Bill Leger, and then I thought, oh, Harley Leger is cool. So it's just those weird things that come from the universe. Sometimes.
Yeah, a million different inspirations.
Yeah.
So, but you mentioned about being able to sort of make a conscious decision about your like how you play the role as the protagonist. So and that is something you were immediately faced with, where it's like if you play the demo, like you're just thrown right into, hey, we're gonna explore this town, and you meet the welcoming committee, and it's do you just like beat the crap out of these guys, or do you you're just like kind of like, oh, okay, well, I get your grift here, but I'm not gonna fall for it, kind of thing. So
what's funny is when I design, because the first main real obstacle in that beginning section is getting into the theater to see the Wild West show. And I realized after I had gone through the point of thinking I was brilliant and I had designed 3 different paths in, I was like, wait a minute, I have a path where you can talk your way in, I have a path where you can punch your way in, or I have a path where you can solve a puzzle. I have literally made the exact same first puzzle from Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, I should rethink this. So I got rid of the talk your way in. And I decided to just go with, okay, you can either take this kid's quest and get him the item that he asks for and do the puzzles. And then there's a variant in the puzzles doing that. Or you can just knock him out in one and bypass it and then deal with the consequences of that afterwards. So, yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's nice because you're on a rail, but you don't feel like you're on a rail, and I think that that's a good part of storytelling because I'm a person that grew up in the area of like the choose your own adventure books and things like that, and I mean if you look at the even the popularity in media of those type of things like Black Mirror did Bandersnatch and all that, where you could kind of you're going to end up here. We need you to get here. You know, narrative wise, but you can kind of twist and turn and do stuff. So it feels like you have a lot of choice compared to many other games that are in this genre where it's just sort of like you have to you get the monkey idol and then you have to give the monkey idol to the guy and then the guy is going to give you the thing and you give it to the other. So it's just a fetch quest. It's like a game made out of fetch quests. I've never got that feeling from Rosewater. It's nice that you can. That it's like, yes, we got to get here, but how you get there, and you can play it where it's like, hey, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna talk to the people and I'm gonna fully explore this town, or you don't have to. You can just like be very utilitarian in how you play the game. There's this big rich world. If you want to be part of that, if you don't, you don't need to know like where the doctor went to school or anything like that to progress in the story. But if you want the flavor of this world that you've made, it's there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Just I mean, I didn't set out to make a game with multiple endings or anything like that. I always wanted the ending to be the same. Like you said, it's just the way you get there is different. There are two. It's not even two different endings, really. The final confrontation plays out in two different ways, depending on how you've played up to that point. But the ending itself is always the same. It's just what happened to your companions is different as well. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the game to feel like you were going on a road trip with your friends, essentially.
Well, it definitely has that feel.
I'd been given feedback as early as the Ben Jordan games. In Ben Jordan Case 4, there's a scene. It's just a cutscene. But in that game, the Case 4. So for anyone who hasn't played the Ben Jordan games, Case 4 takes place entirely in one location, which is a haunted house in London, which is an actual haunted house. And the new thing that I introduced in that game was that there were other paranormal investigators that had been drawn. That had been summoned together to work to solve the mystery of the ghost in this house. So Ben, for the first time, is dealing with other paranormal investigators, and some of them he makes friends with. Some of them are a little bit more stay away from. Not there's no antagonism there, but there's like some are more eager to make friends with him, and two of them end up becoming his friends, and they go out. They appear in the rest of the series. And there's a scene in that game. One of the first nights, they're just hanging out in a room, listening to music, talking, and nothing really happens except they're just getting to know each other. And I was often told that was one of the scenes that a lot of people really liked because it was just a bunch of friends hanging out. And that was the vibe I wanted to make with Rosewater, just on a larger scale, game-wise. So yeah, it's like you say, you know, if you put in the time to get to know a character, I wanted you to have a more rewarding excursion with them when the time comes. There's a standard there for each companion character has a standard version and a higher relationship version of their excursion that plays in sequence during the second act of the game. So if you like a character more than another one and you want to spend more time with them, you get rewarded for that. So I didn't want to make it so that, you know, you had to play the game multiple times to see everything. I mean, you do, But I didn't want it to feel like, oh, I missed out on something, because I feel like that was something that I didn't do completely right in Lamplight City. I felt like there was a lot more feeling of, oh no, I screwed up. Even though the game will continue, I still screwed up. I did wrong. The game is punishing me. That feeling overwhelms the feeling of, oh, but I can continue. So I didn't want you to feel like any choice you made in Rosewater was a bad choice and the game was actively punishing you or having you miss out on something. I just wanted you to feel like, oh, I just saw something different. Maybe if I had tried something different, I would have seen something else, but not one is better than the other or anything like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely. It kind of is part of that with that branching narrative and being able to, have a more deep experience with certain characters than others. That's just as important as puzzles and the intellectual challenge of the game, like that emotional, like world building that kind of happens. But when you are building all of this out, how do you create an interesting puzzle or a mini game that ties around that narrative without just making that feel like a chore?
Yeah.
Now, that was not my experience. I'm not saying that that's my experience. And in fact, I like some of the little puzzles where, like, just speaking inside the demo, because I don't want to give away things about the game. I want people to go and play it, because this is an 8-10 hour experience, depending on how you play the game. And I think that it is a very interesting story that people should just experience. But speaking inside the demo, there is a point where there is a bar brawl, and you have to break it up, and you have to use some, slapsticky kind of stuff, but it's sold as like, hey, this is the smart way to get out of this situation. So, so how do you write those things around your narrative in a way that that you feel is really fulfilling for players?
Well, that is extremely challenging. When I find out the answer, I'll tell you. But in the meantime, I think part of the challenge that I'm setting up for myself in making these games that have branching narrative, which I also want to say, I mentioned that Lamplight City and Rosewater have been my experimenting with that. I'm done with that. Like, for now, I feel like I've made those games. I've explored the branching narrative thing. My current game that I'm working on, my next game, is going to be a linear game, in the narrative sense. I'm focusing more on what I think more people. So this is just opening another can of worms, but I'll start with the question and then I'll go off on my tangent. Okay. So the challenge that I find in having games with branching narrative is that you don't have to you can't just design one puzzle. You have to design multiple puzzles. One of the flaws, I think, in Lamplight City was that the only real puzzles in that game were on the paths that led to the correct solutions to the cases. So if you went down a red herring path, there weren't really any puzzles. And I think that's why people were like, oh, this isn't really an adventure game. It's a visual novel, because it doesn't have any puzzles, because you're always going to get people who say those things, even though they're wrong. So anyway, so the challenge then becomes, how do you design it so that it's fulfilling? So actually, you bring up the bar brawl as the bar brawl is an interesting point, because that actually changed between the demo and the full game. So in the demo, if you choose to take the quest that's given to you by the kid guarding the theater, you get the bar brawl scene. If you choose to punch the kid, you get thrown in jail, and from jail you get rescued by Gentleman Jake, who then takes you to straight to the interview. Whereas the other way, you see the show, you come out, you see him, you go up, you do the interview, you come back down, you have the bar brawl, and then he recruits you. If you punch the kid, I was mistaken. If you punch the kid, you get thrown in jail. Jake takes you straight to the recruitment after that in the demo. I realized afterwards that this was back to the problem that was in Lamplight City. if you chose to punch the kid, you then were robbed of that bar brawl scene. And it wasn't that you made a bad choice. It just felt less narratively fulfilling because for several reasons. One, Jake recruits you because based on the fact that you've punched out a kid in front of a theater to see his show.
It was a weird time. It was a weird time.
It was. But also there's also the fact that Harley's whole reason for wanting to talk to Jake is to get this interview. So to just not feature that in that path also seemed weird. So it was changed then to, okay, you get thrown in jail. Jake comes to see you out of curiosity. And then she says, oh, by the way, I have to interview you. And because Jake's an egomaniac, he's like, oh, okay, yeah, come and interview me. And then it leads back to the bar brawl scene. Right. And then as usual. So that was something that was changed that for that reason. As far as the puzzle aspect of it, yes, it was interesting, especially with the genre, because a bar brawl is something you expect in an action movie, in a Western. But I wanted to think about how to make it a puzzle and not an action sequence.
Right.
So it then becomes, okay, you're not directly participating in the bar brawl. You're watching it happen in the background, and you have to then orchestrate it so that you help the guys win. And then it's also tricky because it's one of those puzzles that's just all self-contained to one room. And then a lot of people feel that if you can solve the puzzle right there in the same room, or you only have to go one screen over and then come back, then it's not really a puzzle. But that's a whole
It felt, I think it's one of those things. There are a lot of people that have some very, very high requirements for things.
Oh, yeah.
That if it's not moon logic, they're just not satisfied.
Yeah.
But I think that if you, as a storyteller, if you set things up and it has a legitimate payoff that has you interacting in a way that feels earned,
yes,
that is fine.
Yeah,
because this is this much. This is a thimble's worth of our narrative.
Yes.
In this ocean of story.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing I was going to, the tangent I was going to go off on was the argument between linearity and non-linearity and what that actually means. And I feel like Rosewater is both a linear and a non-linear game. It's linear in the sense that it just progresses along, the story progresses along a line. It's non-linear in that it branches. But I think that a lot of times people consider, especially in the adventure game genre, people consider non-linearity to be Act 2 of Monkey Island 2, which is to say you have X number of goals. In that case, you're looking for 4 map pieces, or you can have the classic Dave Grossman design philosophy of 3 quests at any one given time. But you have these multiple quests available to you, and there's different things. You can do the chains in any order that you like, or if you get stuck on one, you can go to another one and come back to it. That's what people consider non-linear. And they consider linear to be, okay, you're in one location, it's 3 screens, all the puzzles are on this screen, you solve it, you go on to another location. And people complain about that not being a true adventure game. To which I counter with, remember Leisure Suit Larry 2 or Loom, or games where you had to swap discs and you could only be in one area before moving on to the next one. But again, whatever. Not everything can be Monkey Island 2. Which is good, because if every adventure game was Monkey Island 2, they would all be boring because they would all be the same thing. But anyway, all this is to say, yes, puzzle design is hard. I've always struggled with it. That being said, my current game, again, to give teasers, is a lot more focused on that second non-linearity that I mentioned, which is to say lots of puzzle chains and things you can work on at any given time. And I think too, one thing I've been replaying a lot of old games. I did a little series called Studying the Classics, where I played some of my favorite games that I think are very well designed. I played The Curse of Monkey Island, I played Larry 7, I played Day of the Tentacle. And I was analyzing their puzzle structure and figuring out how the game communicates to you what you have to do. And I think, going back to what you said about moon logic, I think the idea of moon logic versus challenging puzzles just comes down to communication. Because a lot of people complain about the puzzle in Day of the Tentacle where you have to wash the car to make it rain, because that's just like a it's not a superstition.
It's like a trope.
It's like,
but it's a very American trope.
Yes. However, and that's very true. However, there is a clue in the game. If you look at the car, Bernard in the present, Bernard says, some people think that if you wash your car, it makes it rain. And the guy breaking into the car says, oh, that's very interesting. So it's a little out there, but the information is there in the game. And I think that's the difference between a puzzle that's just pure moon logic, like Discworld, for example. How would you know that using starch on a snake is going to make a substitute for a rod? Versus, So I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No, it's just fine.
I'm back.
No, I mean, the car even has the words "wash me" on the windshield in the dirt.
Does.
So I mean, it's not the monkey wrench.
No.
No.
Wordplay should never be used in adventure game puzzles, as we all know.
Yeah, you are very much relying on an English-speaking audience at that point.
Yes.
But let me ask you this: what was the length of development on Rosewater?
It was 6 years. I started in Lamplight City, came out in September of 2018. I started working on character tests and stuff because Rosewater is higher. So Lamplight City is 640 by 400, and Rosewater is 1280 by 720. So I started doing a few just art tests to see if I could work at a higher resolution and keep the same workflow in about October or November of 2019. And I started full steam ahead production in January of 2019. I announced the game in March of 2019, thinking it would be out in 2021. And that clearly did not happen. So it came out in March of 2025. So it took 6 years exactly, more or less, from announcement to release. 6 years and 2 weeks or something like that. And that it was because I built the game. I had the game fully playable from start to finish. I remember on New Year's Eve of, I want to say 2021 or 2022. I don't remember exactly. I know I posted about it on Twitter, so you could probably go look it up. But the reason it took so long after that was because the entirety of Act 2, which is the journey, which is all of the little vignettes and excursions and stuff, I had those in, but the state they were in was you got to them and Harley would say, well, here I am. Here's our excursion. Back on the wagon. So there was nothing to play. Yeah. So I then had to build all that. I had to write all the dialogue. I had to do all the art. I had to figure out all the branching, the programming, and everything. And that added up. It took a lot of time. I mean, just writing all the dialogue for the game alone took me 6 months, which doesn't sound like a lot, considering it's like 170,000 words, but it was a lot. And so that's why it took so long. And I don't have another 6-year project in me again. I realized, not just creatively, but if I release a game once every 6 years, I think I only have about 3 games left in me, and I'd like to make more games than that.
I understand.
So.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was if the overwhelmingly positive reviews of Rosewater can be believed, it was worth the wait.
Yeah, I was very happy that it was well received. I mean, it's funny because when you're with a project for so long, it's very easy to start to hate it. I never hated Rosewater. I never felt like, oh God, I have to play this again. And I've played it many times. I never want to play that demo section again because I've played the first part of that game like 8 bajillion times. But there was never anything that made me pause to think, oh, people might not like this. Like Lamplight City, I thought, oh, people might not like that it doesn't have inventory. And some people didn't like that. The one thing that's been interesting to me to see is the second act that I keep coming back to. That seems to be the dividing point, because the people who get it and love it, they love it. And the people who don't like it are like, this doesn't have anything to do with the main plot. It's boring. It just keeps going. There's nothing happening here. And I get it. But at the same time, it's a story where the main plot itself is not really the most interesting part of the game. This is a game about, as I said, going on a road trip with your friends. So if you don't vibe with that, you're not going to like the game. I get it.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me to see how I guess the specific thing that was interesting to me was the people that complained that the second act had nothing to do with the main story, which is not true, because they're going on this trip. It's just who they encounter along the trip, and once they get there, it gets back to it. But again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about not going with the because I guess I should have mentioned the main impetus for their trip is that they're going in search of a missing fortune. So it's not like they're not hunting something that someone else is hunting. They don't have someone who's chasing them. They don't have clues that they need to follow that or breadcrumbs that someone has left for them. Like, they figure out where they need to go at the end of Act 1, and they just need to go there during Act 2. And I could have made a different game and had that be the focus, but that wasn't the game I wanted to make. I wanted to make a game where you had this treasure hunt, but then you also had this journey where you got to know your companions. So
yeah, well, it was worth it. And I'm not sure what world these people are in that went to the theater to watch City Slickers and were like, well, what's all this cowboy stuff at the end? I liked it when they were just whining about how they hated their lives. I can't believe they wasted the movie like this. I'm kidding, of course. But
yeah, no, I mean, one thing I've learned as a game developer is not every game is for everybody, and there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it, and there's no such thing as a perfect game, and that's totally fine. I'm just happy that a lot of people liked this game.
Absolutely. Francisco Gonzalez, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ron. It's been a pleasure.